Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. Coming back at you with some more NFL draft content coming back after the NFL Combine to talk about some risers from the NFL Combine. You know, a lot of people do risers and fallers. I'm going to particularly stick on the up and up guys. If you guys have any questions about somebody that you thought personally fell, would love to hear them down in the comment section. If there's somebody that was a riser that you think should have been in my list, be sure to let me know as well. Have 24 players here in total. Try to condense it as much as possible, but a lot of this is going to be based on the athletic testing. Obviously, some of it will be from the drills at the same time as well. But I'm going to start off at the quarterback position. I only have one quarterback listed here. I think everybody else was pretty much what we thought they were, but it was good to see Brady Cook look healthy at the NFL Combine. He tested really well. He had a 4.59 40-yard dash, vertical of 37 inches, 10.8 broad jump, 3-cone of 7.01. Short shuttle was 4.17 and did not perform the bench, as most quarterbacks do not do nowadays. So he had a relative athletic score of 9.71, which is actually really good. If you're not familiar with relative athletic score, feel free to check out their website. Feel free to check out MathBomb over on Twitter. He does some great work with that, taking all the numbers for all these prospects and kind of stacking them up where they stand up all time. But you know, anybody that does have that RAS of 9 or better is obviously going to be considered a elite high-end athletic prospect at the end of the day. And I do think in terms of throwing, Brady Cook looked more like his old mechanics, which was a good thing for him. Came in at 6'2", 214 pounds. Hand size was 9.25 inches, so nothing really to worry about there. I think he's an interesting guy overall. I think that some of what we've seen out of him will probably ultimately end up making him a late day 3 pick. And, you know, kind of an interesting developmental quarterback overall. Then we're going to move over to a couple different running backs. We're going to start out with Bhayshul, Tuten, running back out of Virginia Tech, formerly, I believe, of North Carolina A&T as well. So he came in at 5'9", 206 pounds. So some pretty good size there for a little bit smaller back just in general. He was the fastest running back in terms of the 40 time. He ran a 4.32. Vertical was over 40 inches at 40.5, and a broad jump of 10 foot 10 inches. So all three of those were really good. The short shuttle was the one that wasn't as great for him, 4.41. Did not participate in the 3-cone and did not participate in the bench, but he did end up with a relative athletic score of 9.29. I think he's going to be a very interesting prospect, probably a guy that's going to go early day 3 now. So definitely do like him, the upside that he could potentially have. And I think he's going to be a very interesting change of pace back for an NFL team and potentially a kick returner at the end of the day as well. Then we move over to Tahj Brooks, who was a guy that a lot of people had questioning his athletic ability, and he actually tested really well compared to what people thought he would test as. So he's from Texas Tech, coming in at 5'9", 214 pounds. Is a guy that has been able to shoulder the load at least the past 2 seasons at Texas Tech. Prior to that, you know, was splitting it a little bit as well. But he came in, ran the 40-yard dash at 4.52, which is actually a really good time for him. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be like mid to high 6s, so that was actually a really good improvement for him. 35-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump, both are decent numbers there. 3-cone was under 7, it was 6.9. Short shuttle was under 4.1 at 4.06, so that was a really good number as well. And then a respectable 16 reps on the bench, so really good performance for Tahj Brooks, and I think a guy that's probably going to cement himself maybe like a 4th, 5th round pick overall, but a guy that I think NFL teams are going to be pretty interested in. And he finished with a relative athletic score of 8.28, which is actually really good for him. I think a lot of people probably would expect him to be closer to that 5 to 6 range, just with what people were thinking of him coming into this. But he is a guy that shows really good patience, has pretty decent change of direction ability, and a little bit quicker than a lot of people expected. And then a last and final running back is going to be Giddens out of Kansas State. Probably just kind of a forgotten guy at this point in time since he did not participate in a postseason all-star game event. He came in at just under 6 feet, so it did round up to 6 feet, 212 pounds. Ran a 40-yard dash at 4.43, so a really good time for him at that size. The vertical for him was 39.5 inches. It was a 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump, which was really good. Short shuttle was 4.33. That's probably like his one downside there if you had to nitpick anything at this point in time, but did have a relative athletic score of 9.78. I think he's going to be a very interesting prospect overall. We'll see if he does the 3-cone or the bench at Kansas State Pro Day. Then we move over to wide receiver. Tai Felton was a guy that I did like quite a bit coming out of Maryland. Really productive season, 6'1", 183 pounds for Tai Felton, which I believe his weight was down a little bit since the Senior Bowl. Would like to see him a little bit closer to that 190 range, but we'll see what it looks like. Obviously, could have cut a little bit of weight to run that 40, which he ran a sub 4.40 at 4.37. Vertical was 39.5 inches, 10 foot 10 inch broad jumps. So really good numbers for Tai Felton in the 3 categories that he did test in. Did not do the 3 cone, the short shuttle, or the bench. Relative athletics scored 9.6. And I think he's a guy that has cemented himself into kind of late day 2 conversation, early day 3. So like a 3rd or 4th round pick, but he does definitely come with some upside at the end of the day as well. And then we got to talk about one of the biggest guys in terms of size and in terms of performance in Jayden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State, coming in at 6'4", 214 pounds. He ran a 4.47 40-yard dash, which is actually really good for someone of his size. A lot of people probably thought he was going to be like mid 5.5s. 39-inch vertical, obviously very outstanding there. 10 foot 8 inch broad jump. Did not participate in the 3 cone, the short shuttle, or the bench, but came in with a relative athletic score of 9.85. And I think he's very much in the conversation to be one of these higher end wide receivers drafted, probably going early day 2 overall. Then we got his teammate in Jaylin Noel coming in at 5'10", 194 pounds. Very good performance for him overall. So his 40-yard dash was 4.39, 41.5-inch vertical, which I believe was the top among all wide receivers. 11-foot broad jump, obviously very excellent as well. And I do apologize, I actually have these two mixed up. So 3 cone was 6.82 and the short shuttle was 4.17. Both are very excellent numbers. And he put up 23 reps on the bench. So he had a relative athletic score of 9.71. Very, very good performance for Jaylin Noel. I think he's potentially worked himself up to a round 2 pick overall. Then kind of a surprise one for me was Tory Horton out of Colorado State. 6'2", 196 pounds, so decent size there. Didn't get smaller in size, so that was a good thing for him overall. He was coming off an injury, so we weren't sure how well he was going to test, but he did run the 40 in 4.41, which was really good for him, and a 37.5-inch vertical. Those were the only 2 things that he tested out in, but did test relatively well in those, finishing with a relative athletic score of 9.71, which was really good. Obviously, we'll see if we get any of that other testing out of him at the Colorado State Pro Day. Then our final wide receiver is going to be TeSlaa out of Arkansas. 6'4", 214 pounds, so actually the same size as Jayden Higgins. He tested really well at the same time as well. 4.43 40-yard dash, 39.5-inch vertical, 10.9 broad jump. Once again, do apologize here. It looks like I messed up the shuttle and the 3 cone once again. So the short shuttle was 4.05 and the 3 cone was 6.85, which are both very excellent numbers, especially for someone of his size. He put up 17 reps on the bench, which was also very respectable, and finished with a relative athletic score of 9.97, which is one of the best of all time, considering the size that he has. I think he's a very, very interesting developmental wide receiver as a late day 3 pick, and he's really worked his way up in the process, doing well at the Hula Bowl, doing pretty well at the Senior Bowl, and standing out at the Combine. Definitely a very interesting wide receiver as a former D2 transfer that went over to Arkansas the last 2 years. Then we move over to tight end. I only have one person on this list. It's Dippre out of Alabama, 6'5", 256 pounds, so really good traditional size there. I will say with tight end, a lot of the top guys did not test, so we didn't really see much of Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, Tyler Warren, and Colston Loveland. I think those were the 4 main guys. Some of the other tight ends probably didn't test as well as we would have liked to see, so Dippre was kind of the one that stood out for me just in general. He came in with a 40-yard dash of 4.69, 34.5-inch vertical, very respectable there, a 10-foot broad jump, and did not participate in the 3 cone, the short shuttle, or the bench, but did finish with a relative athletic score of 9.62, which is obviously really good for him. Obviously, when you look at him, a guy that did show some flashes in the receiving game at Alabama, probably could have been used a little bit more there. A solid, steady blocker at the same time as well. Then we move over to the offensive line. So I'm going to have one player for each position. So offensive tackle, offensive guard, and center. And we're going to start off with Aireontae Ersery out of Minnesota, 6'6", 331 pounds. Came in with 33 1/8 inch arms, which was passing the threshold of 33 inches. The 40-yard dash came in at a surprising 5:01. Looked really good running it as well. The vertical was 29.5 inches, respectable number there. 9 foot 3 inch broad jump, also a very respectable number. He had a 4.82 in the short shuttle and a 7.81 in the 3 cone, and finished with 25 bench reps. So he had a relative athletic score of 9.33, which is really solid for somebody of his size. And I think he has a really good chance of going in the back half of round 1, if not early round 2. Then we move over to the guard with Tate Ratledge out of Georgia, 6'6", 307 pounds, came in with 32 1/4 inch arms. So he's solidly at that guard position. Also had a pretty cool mullet as well. 40-yard dash was also 5:01 for him. 32-inch vertical, 9-foot 5-inch broad jump, and his 3-cone was 7.38. Did not participate in the short shuttle or the bench, but did have a relative athletic score of 9.98, which was, I believe, 4th all-time in terms of guards since the relative athletic score has existed. So I believe since 1987 or 1984, I can't remember which. Really good combine for him overall. I think he's a guy that does go day 2 now. And then we go over to another Georgia offensive lineman and Jared Wilson out of Georgia as well. 6'3", 310 pounds, 32 3/8 inch arms. So good size for him at that center position and did test really well at that size. He ran a 4.84 in the 40-yard dash. That was faster than some of the tight ends this year. Really good time for a center just in general, especially at 310 pounds. Usually if you see this time out of a center, they're coming in at like 280, 290, so a little bit undersized, and he's definitely not undersized. 32-inch vertical, really good there. 9-foot 4-inch broad jump. Short shuttle was 4.58, and the 3-cone was 7.63, so both very respectable numbers there. Did not participate in the bench, but did finish with a relative athletic score of 9.98. In a weak center class, he does have a chance of being one of the first centers off the board, if not the first in this year's draft overall. Probably going to end up being like a round 3 pick, but definitely could have some decent upside, whether he plays guard or center at the next level. Then we move over to the defensive side of the ball. We got defensive end Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, 6'6", 264 pounds, 33 1/4 inch arms. So decent size for Landon Jackson, which we obviously knew already, but needed him to run 4.7 or less in the 40-yard dash. He did it at 4.68, had the highest vertical at 40.5 inches. Broad jump was 10 foot 9 inches, very solid there. Did not participate in the 3-cone, the short shuttle, or the bench, but did finish with a relative athletic score of 9.88. I think with all the measurables, with all the testing that he's shown, I think there's a really good chance that he goes round 2 in the NFL draft. And then probably the biggest one, which was a guy that we did expect to test really well, Shemar Stewart out of Texas A&M, 6'5", 267 pounds. So he lost 15 pounds since the Senior Bowl. He came in with 34 1/8 inch arms. So really good size for him. Looks like he's going to stay at that defensive end position for sure. I think he's trying to make sure that he does at this size. You know, Texas A&M, him and Nick Scorin played up a little bit in terms of size. So there is a chance that maybe that was just something they wanted to do while they were at Texas A&M. His 40-yard dash came in at 4.59. 40-inch vertical, 10-foot 11-inch broad jump. Did not participate in the 3-cone, the short shuttle, or the bench, but he did end up finishing with a relative athletic score of 10, which puts him in number 1 all time at that defensive end position. I think he's got a really good chance of going, within the top 15 picks, because NFL teams do like to chase traits and potential upside, and Shemar Stewart definitely has a lot of that overall. Then we move over to Jordan Burch. I have him technically listed as defensive line. I thought he was going to be more of a defensive tackle, but 6'4", 279 pounds, 33-inch arms. He really didn't do much in terms of testing, but the testing he did was the 40-yard dash, which was a 4.67. So I think there's a good chance that he stays at that defensive end position with that testing. However, we want to see what all the rest of the testing looks like at that Oregon Pro Day. So he technically did not register a relative athletic score, but very interested to see what he does in the coming weeks at that Oregon Pro Day, and especially what size he ultimately does end up weighing in there at the same time as well. Then we move over to defensive tackle with Jared Harrison Hunte, defensive tackle out of SMU. 6'3", 290 pounds, so a little bit undersized in terms of that weight, 33-inch arms. I will say for him, it was really hard to find a decent picture of him to use in this for him at SMU. There's a lot of pictures on Miami, and a lot of the SMU ones were lower quality, so this was the best one that I could get. Hopefully you guys do enjoy it, but his 40-yard dash came in at 4.86, 32-inch vertical, 9-foot 3-inch broad jump. He did not participate in the 3-cone, the short shuttle, or the bench, but did finish with a relative athletic score of 9.66. A little bit undersized at the defensive tackle position, had some decent highlights on film, and tested really well. So I think there's a good chance, he probably goes like early day 3 as an interesting developmental defensive tackle overall. Then we move over to the linebacker position. I only have one guy here, and it's Teddye Buchanan out of Cal, and he came in at 6'2", 233 pounds, 31 3/8 inch arms. I definitely do like the size with him as an off-ball linebacker. He was another guy that was really hard to find a decent picture of at the same time as well, so this one's probably a little grainy, but He played at Cal. I believe before that he played at UC Davis, so transferred over there, moved up a level. I think he did pretty well at Cal. I know he did a decent job at the Shrine Bowl. And in terms of the 40-yard dash, came in and running a 4.6, 40-inch vertical, 10-foot, 5-inch broad jump. Put up 26 reps on the bench, did not participate in the 3-cone or short shuttle, and he finished with a relative athletic score of 9.77. So I definitely do like the traits and the upside with him overall. We'll see what it looks like at the NFL level, but probably an interesting day 3 project linebacker overall. Then we move over to the defensive backs. We're going to start off with the cornerback position. Technically, this guy could probably play corner or safety, but a guy that I did like quite a bit at the Senior Bowl, Caleb Ransaw. Technically, I have him listed as a defensive back. I think he'll play nickel at the NFL level, out of Tulane, formerly of Troy. Came in at 5'11", 197 pounds, 30 and 3/4 inch arms, so good size for him all around for that nickel position. He ran a 4.33 in terms of the 40-yard dash, 40-inch vertical, 10-foot 9-inch broad jump, and a respectable 16 reps on the bench. Finished with a relative athletic score of 9.95. I definitely like Caleb Ransaw as a nickel at the NFL level, and I think he really has some pretty high-end upside based on what I saw out of him at the Senior Bowl and what I saw out of him at the Combine. And even going through some of the drills, he had very, very fluid hips, so I would expect him to have a good 3-cone and short shuttle, assuming that he does run both those at Tulane's Pro Day. With all that being said, I think he's a very interesting player. He could play safety, he could play nickel, but I think he's a guy that goes around 3 as a nickel at the NFL level. Then we move over to Darren Porter out of Iowa State, 6'3", 195 pounds. He had 33 and 1/8 inch arms. Very good size for a corner, obviously. Had a really good speed, which we expected since he ran well in terms of the zebra technology at the Senior Bowl, but had a 4.3 40-yard dash, 36.5 inch vertical, 10-foot 11 broad jump. Short shuttle was really good at 4.04. The 3-cone was really good at 6.71. Did not participate in the bench, but did have a relative athletic score of 9.99. He's a very interesting player because he started out his Iowa State career as a wide receiver for pretty much 3 years, mainly just playing special teams. Then he transitioned over to corner, mainly played special teams again, started a few games for them this year. Very good athlete, very raw, probably going to end up being like a 4th-round pick, but I think some NFL team is really going to love the traits here and kind of work with him overall. I know there would be like a lot of comps to Tariq Woolen, but I think Tariq Woolen was a little bit further along than he is at this point in time. Then we move over to the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of size with Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky. So he came in at 5'8", technically 5'8.5", 181 pounds, 30-inch arms. So even though he's small in stature, the arm length was still 30 inches, so that is good for him. He's probably going to play in that nickel position at the NFL level. Ran a respectable 4.44 in the 40-yard dash, 37.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 8-inch broad jump. Short shuttle was 4.29, and he led all corners in terms of bench press with 21 reps. So that is very respectable for somebody of his size. When you think of a slot player, they're going to have to fill in against the run. And even with his compact size, still showed decent strength in that bench. And I think it's going to be a very interesting prospect overall. Did perform pretty well at the Senior Bowl. He's got really good flashes on his tape. Relative athletic score was 7.59. I think he's going to be a very interesting day 3 pick overall for some NFL team. Would not be surprised if a team like the Rams takes him overall, as they've had success with guys of his stature before. Then last but not least, we move over to the safety position. I got 3 more players here. So we got Billy Bowman Jr., safety out of Oklahoma. He came in at 5'10", 192 pounds. So he's a little bit on the smaller side. We kind of already knew that. 28.5-inch arms, so that pretty much kills off any chance of him playing anything other than safety. You know, if somebody was trying to look at him as potentially like playing a nickel or something like that, probably not going to happen with that arm length. But the 40-yard dash was respectable at 4.42, 35.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 3-inch broad jump, both very good numbers there, and put up 17 reps on the bench, so that is very respectable. Did not participate in the 3-cone or short shuttle. Probably going to see that out of him at the Oklahoma Pro Day. Came in with a relative athletic score of 7.66. That is a little bit lower just because of the arm length and the size of him overall, but did test really well. So I think he's a guy that, you know, probably going to be like a 4th-round pick. Could have a little bit of success at the NFL level. And, you know, a guy like Ardarius Washington having some success last year at the Baltimore Ravens probably helps out his case just a little bit overall. Then we move over to kind of the big standout in terms of safety in Nick Emmanwori. Safety out of South Carolina, 6'3", 220 pounds, 32.5-inch arms. So when you look at him, he's like the size of a linebacker pretty much to start off. So you're like, oh, okay, so how well is he going to test? Well, the answer to that question was amazing. 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, 43-inch vertical, which I believe was the highest overall at the combine. 11-foot, 6-inch broad jump. I also believe that was the highest at the combine. Did not participate in the 3-corner short shuttle, but did put up 20 bench reps. Relative athletic score of 10. So the highest ever of a safety since they started doing the relative athletic score. Not too much else to be said here. This guy's kind of a freak. He's going to go in the first round. Some NFL team is going to take him based on the traits. Obviously, he's got decent tape at the same time as well, so we'll see how early he goes in the draft, but very, very interesting prospect overall. And then last but not least, we have Keaton Crawford, safety out of Nevada, 5'11", 205 pounds, 31-inch arms. I believe he was one of the few guys that only participated in the Hula Bowl to go to the NFL Combine, so that does say a lot about him, first of all, but tested really well. 4.41 in the 40-yard dash, 41.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 8 broad jump. The short shuttle was at 4.03. 3-cone was at 6.81, 18 reps on the bench. Very outstanding numbers for him. Going to be a very interesting day 3 prospect overall. Finished with a relative athletic score of 9.74. But with that being said, that's what I do have in terms of my risers from the NFL Combine. If you guys think I missed anybody whatsoever, would love to hear it down in the comments. And in terms of followers, be sure to let me know what you guys think of who kind of hurt their draft stock at the NFL Combine. I know there was a lot of different scenarios out there, but would love to kind of talk through those with you, but really just want to focus on the guys that did help out their stock. I will be posting my mock 2.0 post-combine mock in the coming days, so definitely I'll look out for that as well. But with that being said, if you were brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or if you have to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have NBA DFS in terms of the core pick videos Tuesday through Friday. Been dropping NFL draft content, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And then last but not least, if you're interested in prop betting, if you're interested in sports betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Prize Picks, and Parlay Play. If you're a brand new user on any one of those 3 sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day, and definitely looking forward to hearing more from you guys down in that comment section as well.